Have you ever felt a strange sense of déjà vu when reading about the past, as if history isn't just a series of forgotten events, but a mirror reflecting our modern world in ways that send chills down your spine? Medieval history is full of these eerie echoes, mysteries, and phenomena that feel like they were ripped straight from today's headlines. From unexplained disappearances to conspiracy theories that span centuries, the past and present share a connection far deeper than we often realize. It's as if time itself is playing tricks on us, whispering secrets through the ages. Take, for example, the baffling case of the vanishing village. In the year 1348, an entire settlement in Germany simply disappeared overnight. No signs of struggle, no traces left behind, just empty homes and cold hearths. Now fast forward to the 20th century, and you'll find nearly identical stories of towns wiped from the map without explanation. Coincidence, or is there something more unsettling at play? These parallels aren't just curiosities, they're clues, hinting at patterns that defy logic and challenge our understanding of history itself. That's exactly what we're exploring today. 30 times the past echoed in modern times, revealing connections so uncanny, they'll make you question everything. We'll uncover forgotten prophecies that predicted modern disasters, medieval crimes with shockingly familiar motives, and even ancient technologies that seem suspiciously ahead of their time. Each story is a piece of a larger puzzle, one that blurs the line between then and now. So if you've ever wondered whether history truly repeats itself, or if something far more mysterious is at work, you're about to embark on a journey that will leave you seeing the past in a whole new light. The truth is stranger than fiction, and it's waiting just beyond the next page. The Black Death wasn't just a medieval tragedy, it was a haunting preview of the chaos we'd face centuries later. When the plague swept through Europe in the 1300s, it didn't just kill millions, it exposed the same fears, flaws, and frailties we saw during COVID-19. Start with the speed of its spread. Ships arriving at Italian ports carried infected rats, and within months, the disease raced across trade routes just as modern air travel catapulted our own pandemic around the globe. But the real shock comes from the human reactions. Authorities in Venice ordered ships to anchor for 40 days before docking, an early quarantine called quarantina, giving us the very word we use today. Sound familiar? Then there's the misinformation. Medieval doctors blamed bad air or angry stars, while today's conspiracy theories swapped astrology for 5G towers. Both eras saw people clinging to wild explanations when science couldn't provide fast enough answers. Economic collapse followed both plagues. Wages soared as workers grew scarce after the Black Death, just like the labor shortages during COVID-19. Even the scapegoating echoes across time. Jewish communities were falsely accused of poisoning wells in the 1400s, while modern hate crimes spiked against Asian communities during the recent pandemic. But here's the chilling takeaway: these aren't just coincidences. They reveal how crisis strips societies down to their core behaviors, regardless of the century. The same desperation that drove flagellant monks to whip themselves in penance resurfaced in panic buying and hoarding 600 years later. History doesn't repeat so much as rhyme, and these parallels are its darkest verses. The fear that fueled medieval witch hunts never truly disappeared, it just found new hiding places. In the 1500s and 1600s, a single whispered accusation could send a woman to the stake, tried not by evidence but by rumors spreading like wildfire through villages. Today, that same feverish momentum thrives online, where a single tweet can ignite a digital witch hunt with terrifying speed. The targets may have changed. Social media mobs don't burn people at the stake, but the mechanisms of mass hysteria remain eerily identical. Look at how accusations spread. In Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, teenage girls pointed fingers at neighbors, sparking a chain reaction of paranoia where even the most absurd claims were believed. Fast forward to Twitter pylons, where a viral accusation, true or not, can derail careers before facts surface. Both systems thrive on spectacle. Medieval trials forced confessions under torture, while today's internet demands public apologies as performative proof of guilt. And just like in the past, those accused rarely recover their reputations, whether they were innocent or not. But here's the darkest parallel: the arbiters of judgment. Medieval witch-finders used spectral evidence, dreams and visions as proof of guilt, while modern cancel culture often convicts based on screenshots or out-of-context clips. Both eras weaponized morality, turning righteous anger into a tool for control. Consider the case of Bridget Bishop, the first woman hanged in Salem, whose crime was wearing bright clothes and running a tavern behaviors that clashed with Puritan norms. Today, influencers face similar outrage for outdated tweets or misunderstood jokes, punished not by courts but by algorithms amplifying outrage, the real tragedy. Scapegoating solves nothing. Burning witches didn't end crop failures, just as canceling strangers doesn't fix systemic issues. Both movements feed on the same human craving to pin chaos on a villain, to believe purging the bad will restore order. History's lesson is clear: when fear outpaces reason, the crowd becomes the executioner. And whether it's a torch or a trending hashtag, the fire burns just as hot. In the dim candlelight of a 15th century scholar's study, someone painstakingly filled the pages of what would become one of history's greatest riddles, the Voynich Manuscript. Its bizarre illustrations of unknown plants, celestial charts, and nude figures bathing in green liquid have baffled experts for centuries, just as modern cryptographic puzzles like the crypto sculpture or the shadowy cicada 3301 challenge today's brightest minds. The parallels between these enigmas, separated by hundreds of years, reveal something profound. Humanity's obsession with the unsolvable isn't just curiosity, it's a compulsion. Take the Voynich Manuscript's language first. Written in an alphabet that matches no known script, its curling symbols have resisted decades of codebreakers, including World War II cryptographers who cracked Nazi ciphers but failed to decipher this medieval puzzle. Fast forward to the late 20th century, when the CIA's crypto sculpture embedded with a coded message was unveiled in 1990. To this day, 3 of its 4 sections remain unsolved, despite armies of amateur and professional sleuths working for decades. The same frustration binds both mysteries. The harder they resist interpretation, the more fiercely we chase answers. Then there's the question of purpose. Some believe the Voynich Manuscript was an elaborate hoax, while others argue it's a lost herbal or alchemical text. Similarly, Cicada 3301, a cryptic online puzzle that emerged in 2012, spawned endless theories. Was it an intelligence agency's recruitment test? An art project, a cult? Both phenomena thrive on the ambiguity, drawing people into a rabbit hole where every potential clue only deepens the mystery. But here's the most striking similarity: the communities they create. Medieval scholars likely passed the Voynich Manuscript among themselves, just as today's Reddit forums and Discord servers buzz with collaborative attempts to crack cryptos or cicada. The tools have changed: quills replaced by keyboards, parchment by pixels, but the human impulse remains identical. We're wired to seek patterns, to believe that every lock has a key, even when none can be found. The chilling truth: some codes may never be broken, and perhaps that's their real power, not in the answers they hold, but in the way they force us to confront the limits of our understanding. Whether it's a 600-year-old manuscript or a modern digital labyrinth, these puzzles are mirrors, reflecting our endless drive to solve the unsolvable, even when the only reward is the hunt itself. One summer day in 1518, the streets of Strasbourg erupted with something far stranger than disease. People began dancing. Not the joyous movements of celebration, but a frantic, uncontrollable compulsion that seized one woman, then dozens, then hundreds. Within weeks, the dancing plague claimed up to 400 victims, their feet bleeding as they twirled without rest, some collapsing dead from exhaustion. This wasn't medieval folklore, it was mass hysteria so potent it distorted reality itself. And when we examine modern psychogenic illnesses or viral social media dares, the same terrifying pattern emerges: the human mind's ability to turn suggestion into epidemic. Compare the dancing plague to the twitching outbreaks in 20th century Tanzania, where schoolgirls began convulsing after one student's mysterious tremors spread like a contagion. Or consider the wave of TikTok-induced Tourette's-like tics that swept through teenagers in 2021, their symptoms neurologically real yet rooted in shared exposure, not biology. These phenomena share a spine-chilling thread. Behavioral contagion doesn't require a virus. A single spark of witnessed action can ignite a wildfire of imitation, whether in a 16th century square or a 21st century algorithm. Social media challenges offer an even sharper parallel. Like the Strasbourg dancers, participants in viral dares often describe an inexplicable urge to join in, even when logic protests. The Tide Pod Challenge or Blackout Challenge weren't spread by pathogens but by peer influence amplified to dangerous extremes, a digital age echo of the same communal pressure that drove medieval villagers to dance until their lungs failed. Authorities in 1518 blamed hot blood or demonic possession. Today, we point to dopamine hits and social validation. Yet both explanations miss the deeper horror. The human brain is wired to mirror even when the stakes are fatal. What makes these episodes truly unsettling isn't their rarity, it's their predictability. Strip away the era-specific trappings and you'll find identical ingredients: stress famine in Strasbourg, pandemic anxiety today, tight-knit communities, medieval villages, online subcultures, and a catalyst: one dancer, one viral post. History's greatest trick isn't repeating itself, it's revealing that our minds have always been the most contagious force of all. The fields of Europe turned to graveyards in the early 1300s, not from war or plague, but from a silent killer that reshaped civilization's climate change. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 wasn't just a bad harvest, it was a preview of how fragile our relationship with the environment truly is. Unrelenting rains drowned crops, turning fertile soil into swamps, while winters grew so harsh that birds froze mid-flight. Sound eerily familiar? Swap medieval chronicles for modern news headlines, and you'll find the same warnings: rising sea levels, unpredictable growing seasons, and a desperate scramble to adapt before it's too late. What's chilling isn't just the similarity of the crises, but the identical human failures that magnified them. Back then, farmers clung to outdated practices, planting the same crops in waterlogged fields while grain stores dwindled. Today, despite satellite forecasts and genetic engineering, we still gamble with monoculture farming and depleted soil, leaving food supplies vulnerable to the next drought or flood. Even the political responses mirror each other. Medieval lords hoarded grain, sparking riots, just as modern nations impose export bans during shortages, sending global food prices spiraling. But here's the most sobering parallel: the triggers. The Great Famine coincided with the start of the Little Ice Age, a natural climate shift. Our current crisis, though, human hands are turning up the heat. Yet both eras share a fatal hesitation, a refusal to act until starvation knocks at the door. Monks wrote of eating tree bark in 1316. Today, scientists warn of nutrient collapse in staple crops by 2050. History's lesson is written in wilted fields and empty bellies. Ignore the weather at your peril. The only difference this time, we're the ones holding the match. The monks of Lindisfarne had no warning before the dragon-headed ships appeared on the horizon that June morning in 793. In the span of a few brutal hours, Viking raiders looted treasures, burned manuscripts, and slaughtered defenders, a sudden strike that severed England's spiritual nerve center. Now picture a modern counterpart, a hospital's screens flashing red as ransomware locks patient records, or a power grid failing under a coordinated hack. The tactics may have swapped longships for laptops, but the essence remains unchanged, a calculated, devastating breach of society's most vulnerable points. What makes these parallels so uncanny isn't just the violence, but the strategy. Viking raiders targeted monasteries not for their gold alone, but for their concentration of wealth and cultural importance, soft targets with maximal impact. Today's cybercriminals operate on identical logic, breaching hospitals, pipelines, and banks precisely because disrupting them sends shockwaves through entire nations. The North Sea raiders exploited gaps in coastal defenses. Their digital descendants probe for weaknesses in firewalls. Even the aftermath mirrors across centuries. Just as the Lindisfarne attack sparked panic throughout Christian Europe, the colonial pipeline hack in 2021 triggered fuel shortages and nationwide anxiety. Consider the psychological warfare too. The Vikings left survivors to spread terror, ensuring their reputation did half the work for future raids. Modern hackers leak sensitive data to amplify fear, turning breaches into spectacles that erode trust in institutions. When cybercriminals paralyzed Atlanta's city services in 2018, the chaos echoed the deliberate terror of Vikings burning the monastery at Iona, a message to all who thought themselves safe. Yet here's the most unsettling twist: the defenders' dilemmas are identical across time. Medieval monks debated whether to fortify or flee, just as today's IT teams weigh costly security upgrades against the odds of being targeted. And while we've replaced torches with Trojan viruses, the core truth remains: civilization's lifelines are always someone else's bullseye. The raiders simply traded axes for algorithms, proving that the darkest echoes of history aren't found in events, but in the unchanging nature of exploitation itself. High above the pews of medieval churches, vivid frescoes depicted sinners writhing in flames, their flesh blistering under eternal damnation, a graphic warning meant to steer congregations toward righteousness. These doom paintings weren't just art, they were psychological warfare, weaponizing fear to provoke change. Now, fast forward to the 21st century, where climate activists project images of burning forests and melting glaciers onto government buildings, their message just as visceral: repent or face catastrophe. The medium has evolved from pigment to pixels, but the strategy remains uncannily identical: shock the audience into action by making the abstract terrifyingly real. Take the 15th century doom painting at St. Thomas's Church in Salisbury, where damned souls plunge into a fiery abyss, their agonized faces mirrored in modern photos of Californians fleeing wildfires. Both images exploit the same primal instinct: fear of fire as punishment. Medieval priests claimed hell's flames awaited the morally corrupt. Today's activists warn of earthly infernos for environmental neglect. Even the symbolism overlaps: the demons prodding sinners in medieval art find their counterparts in oil executives and politicians caricatured as modern-day tormentors, gleefully stoking the flames of climate collapse. What's truly striking, though, is how both movements target the same cognitive weak spot: human short-term thinking. A peasant in 1400 might confess sins after seeing a doom painting, but revert to old habits once the terror faded. Similarly, a viewer might share a viral image of a scorched koala, then forget it by the next Amazon delivery. Both campaigns grapple with the paradox of urgency: how to sustain attention when the crisis feels distant until it's at your doorstep. Yet there's a crucial difference. Medieval doom paintings framed disaster as divine retribution, inescapable for sinners, irrelevant for the pious. Modern environmental imagery, by contrast, emphasizes collective responsibility. A burning planet isn't punishment for moral failings, but the consequence of systemic inaction. The flames are the same, but the narrative has shifted from "save your soul" to "save your species." The eerie power of these parallels lies in their uncomfortable truth: fear works. Whether it's a 14th century friar pointing to hell or a 21st century scientist holding up satellite images of vanishing ice, the goal is identical: to make the future's chaos feel immediate, visceral, and unavoidable. And perhaps that's the most unsettling echo of all: the realization that after 600 years, we still haven't found a better way to change hearts and minds than to set them on fire. Buried beneath the Mediterranean waves for 2,000 years, the Antikythera mechanism wasn't just a relic, it was a revolution. When sponge divers stumbled upon its corroded gears off the Greek coast in 1901, they'd unknowingly recovered history's most sophisticated analog computer, a device so advanced it wouldn't be matched until the 18th century. This intricate bronze puzzle, no larger than a shoebox, could predict eclipses, track Olympic cycles, and model planetary movements with staggering precision. But here's what chills the spine: its genius isn't confined to antiquity. The same mechanical principles that powered this ancient wonder are now making a comeback in the most unexpected of places: modern cybersecurity. Take a closer look at those gears. The Antikythera's differential mechanism, once thought impossible for its time, allowed it to handle complex calculations by meshing rotating components in perfect harmony. Today, that same concept lives on in air-gapped analog computers used by governments and militaries for unhackable communications. Why? Because while digital systems rely on binary code vulnerable to cyberattacks, analog machines, like their ancient predecessor, operate through physical motion. You can't infiltrate a gear with malware or spoof a swinging pendulum. From encrypted signal generators to mechanical voting machines, engineers are resurrecting analog tech as a shield against digital threats, proving that sometimes the best defense is a mechanism older than the Colosseum. The parallels don't stop at hardware. Consider the Antikythera's purpose: decoding cosmic patterns. Modern cryptographers face a similar challenge: finding order in apparent chaos, whether unraveling prime numbers or predicting algorithmic behavior. Both systems rely on the belief that the universe operates by rules waiting to be mapped, whether etched in bronze or silicon. Even the mechanism's eclipse predictions mirror today's cybersecurity forecasts, where experts analyze digital weather patterns to anticipate hacker storms before they strike. Yet the most profound echo lies in the philosophy behind both technologies. The Antikythera's creators didn't just build a tool, they encoded their understanding of the cosmos into tangible form. Today's analog revivalists share that ethos, rejecting the fragility of virtual solutions for machinery you can hold, turn, and trust. In an age where a single line of code can collapse systems, the click of a gear tooth feels like a whispered secret from the past. Complexity doesn't require invisibility. Sometimes the future looks an awful lot like 2,000-year-old clockwork. In 1212, thousands of children gathered across Europe, convinced they could achieve what armies and kings had failed to do: reclaim Jerusalem through pure faith alone. The Children's Crusade, as it came to be known, ended in tragedy. Many perished from hunger and disease, while others were sold into slavery by unscrupulous merchants who preyed on their idealism. Yet this heartbreaking medieval event carries an eerie resonance today, as modern youth activists like Greta Thunberg galvanize millions with their urgent calls for change. The stark contrast between these movements reveals both how far we've come and how little some societal reactions have shifted when children dare to lead. At first glance, the parallels seem striking. Both movements were born from desperation: medieval children responding to the failures of the adult world during the Crusades, modern teens confronting climate inaction and political stagnation. Both harnessed the moral clarity of youth, cutting through complexity with uncompromising demands. But here's where the similarities fracture. The Children's Crusade was steeped in mysticism. Accounts speak of a 12-year-old shepherd boy claiming divine visions, gathering followers through charismatic fervor. Today's youth activists, by contrast, wield data and science, their authority rooted not in prophecy but in IPCC reports and peer-reviewed studies. yet society's backlash follows a chillingly familiar script. Medieval chroniclers dismissed the young crusaders as naive or manipulated, just as modern critics accuse climate strikers of being puppets or pawns. The 12th century church initially tolerated the movement before abandoning it. Contemporary leaders offer symbolic support while delaying substantive policy changes. Even the language of mockery echoes across centuries where medieval elites scoffed at barefoot beggars pretending to holiness. Internet trolls now deride young activists as snowflakes or doomers. But the most profound difference lies in agency. The Children's Crusade was ultimately a story of exploitation, adults weaponizing youthful idealism for their own ends, then discarding the victims. Modern youth movements, though still facing condescension, have tools their medieval counterparts couldn't imagine: social media to organize globally, legal systems to file climate lawsuits, platforms like the UN to amplify their voices. When Greta Thunberg told world leaders, "How dare you?" she channeled a rage no medieval child could safely express. What these parallels reveal isn't just historical irony, it's a measuring stick for progress. Societies still struggle to reconcile with child leaders, but where medieval children were martyrs, today's youth are becoming architects of change. The tragedy of the Children's Crusade wasn't that kids dreamed too big, it's that adults refused to listen. 800 years later, the question remains, are we finally ready to hear them? When the Knights Templar weren't defending pilgrims in the Holy Land, they were quietly inventing the blueprint for modern banking, a system so advanced it would feel strangely familiar to anyone with a credit card today. Founded in the 12th century as a monastic military order, the Templars stumbled into finance out of necessity. Pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem needed a way to protect their wealth from bandits, so the knights devised an ingenious solution. Travelers could deposit funds at one Templar preceptory and withdraw them at another, using coded receipts as medieval ATM slips. This simple innovation, essentially the first international wire service, would ripple through history, laying the foundations for everything from Swiss bank accounts to digital transactions. The Templars didn't just move money, they invented trust itself. Their network of fortresses doubled as secure vaults, their reputation for honesty so ironclad that kings and popes entrusted them with fortunes. Sound like any modern institutions? Think of the FDIC-insured banks or blockchains, encrypted ledgers, both descendants of the Templar model where security and credibility are the currency. Even their downfall echoes in contemporary finance. When King Philip IV of France, drowning in debt, orchestrated the Templars' destruction in 1307, it wasn't just a political purge, it was history's first bank heist at the sovereign level, a grim preview of modern bail-ins and frozen assets. But the real shock comes when you examine their financial instruments. Templars issued letters of credit allowing pilgrims to borrow against future donations, a medieval version of a line of credit. They even charged fees for currency exchange, functioning as proto-bankers with profit motives cloaked in piety. Fast forward to today, and you'll see the same principles in Islamic banking's fee-based structures or PayPal's cross-border transactions. The Knights' greatest legacy wasn't their swords but their ledgers, proving that money flows where trust is armored in innovation. Yet here's the twist: the Templars' system collapsed precisely because it grew too powerful, too intertwined with the elites it served. A warning etched in parchment and blood, one that Wall Street and crypto empires would do well to remember. Whether it's a 13th century knight or a 21st century algorithm, finance's golden rule remains unchanged: guard the vault but never forget who holds the keys. Sarah Winchester didn't stop building for 38 years. Driven by grief and a medium's warning that restless spirits would haunt her unless she continuously expanded her California mansion, she oversaw a construction project that defied all logic: staircases leading nowhere, doors opening onto walls, corridors twisting back upon themselves. The Winchester Mystery House stands as a monument to obsession. its 160 rooms sprawling without master plan or purpose. Now, centuries later, artificial intelligence has begun generating architectural designs that feel just as uncannily labyrinthine digital blueprints where rooms float in impossible arrangements and structures mutate beyond human comprehension. Both creations share a haunting quality. They're built by systems that follow rules no living architect would recognize. Take the house's infamous door to nowhere on the second floor, which opens onto an 8-foot drop. At first glance, it seems like madness until you see AI-generated buildings with staircases that spiral into ceilings or hallways that terminate in solid brick. These aren't mistakes, they're the inevitable output of their creators' peculiar logic. For Sarah Winchester, it was the relentless drive to confuse vengeful ghosts. For AI, it's the statistical probabilities of a neural network trained on millions of floor plans, combining features in ways that prioritize novelty over function. The results, though separated by a century, feel cut from the same eerie cloth structures that obey hidden rules while flouting common sense. Even their construction processes mirror each other. Winchester employed a team of carpenters who worked around the clock, adding rooms based on her nightly seance instructions rather than any overarching design. Modern generative AI operates similarly, piecing together elements from its training data without concern for coherence. Both systems prioritize quantity and variation over usability, creating spaces that feel dreamlike in their disregard for physics. A Winchester hallway might narrow suddenly to 2 feet wide, just as an AI might generate a bedroom accessible only by crawling through a fireplace. The difference. One was fueled by spiritual panic, the other by datasets, but both push architecture into the realm of the surreal. What makes these parallels truly unsettling isn't the strangeness of the designs, but what they reveal about human psychology. The Winchester house reflects our terror of the unseen, the desperate need to control forces we don't understand. AI architecture, by contrast, mirrors our growing comfort with systems whose decision-making processes are equally opaque. We've swapped sciences for algorithms, yet the outcome remains the same: structures that feel less like shelters and more like puzzles without solutions. Perhaps that's the most telling echo of all. Whether guided by spirits or silicon, we keep building labyrinths, hoping to outrun whatever's chasing us. The villagers of Woolpit were reaping their summer harvest when they stumbled upon something impossible. 2 children, their skin tinged an unnatural green, speaking a language no one could understand. Found near one of Suffolk's infamous wolf pits in the 12th century, the siblings became instant curiosities, refusing all food until they were offered beans, their only sustenance for months. Medieval chroniclers spun theories. Were they fairy folk from underground kingdoms, victims of some alchemical mishap, or had they wandered into our world from a place where the very laws of nature twisted differently? Fast forward to the 20th century, and you'll find almost identical stories, not in dusty manuscripts, but in the accounts of alleged UFO encounters where star visitors speak strange tongues and react to earthly environments in baffling ways. The Green Children weren't just a medieval oddity, they were the first draft of a story we're still telling today, one where the unknown walks among us, wearing faces almost but not quite human. Consider the parallels point by point. The children's green skin mirrors modern descriptions of extraterrestrial greys, an unnatural hue signaling their otherness. Their initial refusal of food recalls countless abduction testimonies where witnesses claim aliens recoil from human sustenance, as if our very biology is alien to them. Even their eventual assimilation feels ripped from a sci-fi script. One child sickens and dies while the survivor learns English, loses her green tint, and integrates into society, a medieval close encounter of the third kind. The biggest twist: modern theories now suggest the Woolpit children might have suffered from arsenic poisoning, a condition that can cause a greenish pallor. Yet even this explanation echoes contemporary ufology. where military experiments and misidentified technology often lurk behind the most fantastical sightings. But the real fascination lies in how both eras processed these encounters. Medieval writers framed the mystery through religious and folkloric lenses. Were the children damned souls or proof of God's creation's diversity? Today, we swap theology for quantum physics, speculating about interdimensional travelers or government cover-ups. The tools of interpretation have changed, but the human impulse remains identical: to force the inexplicable into narratives we can almost understand. When a Mexican Congress displayed alleged alien corpses in 2023, the global reaction mirrored Woolpit's villagers' equal parts awe, skepticism, and a desperate need to categorize the uncanny. What makes these stories endure isn't their strangeness, but their ambiguity. The green children left no definitive answers, just as UFO footage remains stubbornly grainy. Both phenomena thrive in the gap between evidence and explanation, a space where faith and science wage endless war. After 800 years, we're still peering into the same dark forest, wondering if the shadows there are wolves or something far stranger. The only difference is now some of us carry cameras. In the year 1457, the citizens of Lausanne filed a formal lawsuit against a swarm of beetles, accusing them of devouring crops and demanding their immediate excommunication from the church. This wasn't an isolated incident. Medieval Europe's animal trials stretched from pigs convicted of murder to locusts ordered to appear in court with appointed defense attorneys. Fast forward to 2021, when an Ecuadorian court granted legal personhood to a woolly monkey named Estrelita, and you'll realize these bizarre legal spectacles weren't just superstitious theater. They were the first tremors of a seismic debate we're still wrestling with today. Can non-humans hold rights, and if so, where do we draw the line? The medieval approach was bluntly pragmatic. When a pig in 1480 was hanged for trampling a child, the trial wasn't about animal morality. It was about restoring cosmic order through ritual. Communities believed nature answered to divine law, and prosecuting creatures rebalanced the scales of justice. Modern courts might not dress roosters in miniature defendants' robes anymore, but the underlying principle persists. Consider the Wanganui River in New Zealand, granted legal personhood in 2017 as part of a treaty settlement with the Maori, who view it as an ancestor. Or the Spanish Parliament's push to extend basic rights to great apes, recognizing their capacity for pain and social bonds. The language has shifted from exorcism to ecology, but the question remains eerily similar: how much of the natural world deserves a voice in our systems? Technology amplifies these echoes in unexpected ways. When a Saudi robot named Sophia was granted citizenship in 2017, critics joked about voting rights for toasters, but medieval lawyers would have understood perfectly. They once debated whether mice stealing grain should be given fair warning before extermination, just as ethicists now argue over whether AI should inherit human rights as they approach consciousness. Both eras grapple with the same slippery slope. If we grant protections to one non-human entity, what stops the floodgates from opening? A 15th century farmer might have scoffed at prosecuting insects, just as a modern judge hesitates to hear a case filed by a glacier. Yet here's where the parallels take a chilling turn. Medieval animal trials often served as scapegoats for human failures, blaming rats for plagues caused by poor sanitation, much like today's corporations deflect environmental accountability. The real trial was never about the defendants. It was about human anxieties masquerading as justice. When India's Ganges River was declared a legal person in 2017, the ruling came not from reverence, but because assigning rights was the only way to force pollution cleanup. Just like those excommunicated beetles centuries ago, the river became a legal fiction to address human shortcomings. The most revealing comparison lies in the backlash. Medieval clergy eventually stopped trying locusts when Enlightenment thinkers mocked the practice, just as modern attempts to grant rights to AI or ecosystems face ridicule from those fearing absurd extremes. But history's lesson is clear. Every expansion of personhood, whether to animals, rivers, or algorithms, begins by seeming ridiculous before it becomes revolutionary. The real question isn't whether a chatbot deserves a day in court, it's whether we've outgrown the medieval impulse to control nature through law without first examining our own role in the chaos we claim to judge. Medieval artists had a favorite way to terrify their audiences: the gaping Helmuth, a monstrous maw lined with fangs and flames, swallowing sinners whole as demons gleefully prodded them into the abyss. These vivid church frescoes weren't just fire and brimstone propaganda, they were the Middle Ages version of a blockbuster disaster film designed to shock, awe, and sear moral lessons into the collective psyche. Fast forward to today's apocalyptic cinema, where cities crumble into sinkholes or alien invasions reduce skyscrapers to dust, and you'll realize we're still staring into the same symbolic abyss, only now it's dressed in CGI rather than cracked plaster. The Helmuth's power lay in its visceral immediacy. Unlike abstract theological concepts, this was terror you could see, a literal entrance to chaos gaping beneath your feet. Modern disaster films exploit the same primal fear. When a film like 2012 shows California sliding into the Pacific or The Day After Tomorrow flash freezes New York, it's tapping into that ancient dread of the ground giving way, the world's order reversing in an instant. Even the framing echoes medieval art. Compare the dam tumbling headfirst into a Helmuth with the shot of Tom Cruise sprinting up a collapsing street in Edge of Tomorrow. Both portray helplessness against an all-consuming maw, one divine, the other extraterrestrial. Yet the most striking parallel is how both mediums use catastrophe as metaphor. Medieval Helmuths warned of spiritual collapse, the consequence of sin unraveling society's fabric. Today's dystopian stories, from Mad Max's Wastelands to The Handmaid's Tale's Theocracy, reflect contemporary anxieties: climate change, authoritarianism, pandemics. The Helmuth didn't just depict punishment, it mirrored the very real chaos of peasant revolts, plagues, and feudal violence. Similarly, Children of Men's barren future or Snowpiercer's frozen class warfare aren't just entertainment, they're funhouse mirrors held up to our deepest societal fears. Technology has transformed the delivery, but not the hunger. Where medieval parishioners gathered to gawk at doom paintings, modern audiences flock to IMAX screenings of asteroid impacts. Both experiences offer a cathartic rehearsal for disaster, a way to confront the unthinkable from the safety of a pew or plush seat. The Helmuth's descendants even lurk in our algorithms. Viral videos of hurricanes or wildfires scratch the same itch as those frescoes, blending awe and admonishment in equal measure. What's truly revealing, though, is who controls the narrative. Medieval Helmuths were tools of institutional power, their horrors sanctioned by the church to enforce compliance. Today's apocalypses are often rebellions. The Hunger Games and Parasite weaponize collapse to critique the very systems medieval art upheld. The mouth still gapes, but now it howls with revolution. Perhaps that's the final evolution of this ancient motif. No longer a threat from above, but a roar from below, warning that if we don't change course, the jaws of history will snap shut on us all. In the shadowy corners of medieval Europe, whispers spread like poison. Jewish communities were accused of kidnapping Christian children to use their blood in dark rituals. This grotesque fantasy, known as the blood libel, first surfaced in 12th century England when a boy named William of Norwich was found dead. His death instantly blamed on local Jews despite zero evidence. The same script played out for centuries, sparking massacres from Spain to Germany whenever a child went missing or a corpse turned up. Now fast forward to 2020, when QAnon followers claimed elite Democrats were harvesting a life-extending chemical called adrenochrome from kidnapped children. The names have changed, but the blueprint is chillingly identical. a fabricated narrative painting a marginalized group as monstrous conspirators lurking just beyond the light. What makes these parallels so disturbing isn't just their cruelty, but their structural symmetry. Both myths hinge on three toxic ingredients: fear of the vulnerable children, disgust toward a manufactured other, Jews then, liberal elites now, and the thrill of secret knowledge. Medieval peasants who'd never met a Jew could describe imagined rituals in vivid detail, just as QAnon adherents who have never set foot in a Washington basement know about hidden tunnels and satanic feasts. The blood libel thrived in an era of plague and famine, when people craved simple explanations for suffering. QAnon surged during a pandemic, offering panicked minds a villainous cabal to blame for chaos no one could control. Even the dissemination methods mirror each other. In the Middle Ages, blood libel accusations spread via illustrated pamphlets and fiery sermons, crude but effective propaganda tools. Today, algorithm-boosted memes and viral threads serve the same purpose, using clipped videos and out-of-context quotes as proof where medieval artists once drew Jews with fangs. Both systems exploit confirmation bias. Once you believe the lie, every coincidence becomes corroboration. A missing child in 1350, clearly kidnapped by Jews. A pizza parlor's odd decor in 2016, obviously a pedophile code. The human brain hasn't evolved much in 700 years. We still see patterns where none exist, especially when fear clouds judgment. Yet there's a critical difference in scale. A medieval blood libel might spark a local pogrom, but QAnon's digital wildfire reached the White House, with adherents storming the Capitol wearing Camp Auschwitz hoodies. The stakes have escalated from mob violence to institutional erosion, showing how ancient hatreds mutate when weaponized by modern tech. When Hugo Chavez posthumously rigged the 2020 U.S. election in QAnon lore, it recycled the same fantastical thinking that once claimed Jews poisoned wells, just swapped out one scapegoat for another. The most terrifying lesson here isn't about persistence of hate, but its adaptability. These myths don't just endure, they evolve, slipping into new context like a virus-jumping species. The blood libel didn't die with the Middle Ages. Its shape shifted into protocols of the Elders of Zion, then blood purity laws, and now Pizzagate. Each iteration leaves the same trail: broken lives, shattered trust, and societies so busy hunting shadows they ignore the real wolves at the door. The past never really vanishes, it just waits for the right conditions to rise again, whispering old lies in new ears. The alchemists hunched over their crucibles weren't just chasing gold. They were after something far more elusive, the secret to eternal life. In damp workshops from Prague to Baghdad, these medieval scientists brewed mercury-laden elixirs, scoured ancient texts for the mythical philosopher's stone, and even experimented with distilled human blood, all in pursuit of the ultimate prize, cheating death itself. Fast forward to Silicon Valley's gleaming labs today, where tech moguls inject themselves with young blood plasma, fund cryonic startups, and bankroll AI designed to digitize human consciousness. The tools have upgraded from alembics to algorithms, but the dream remains unchanged: to conquer mortality, no matter the cost. What's striking isn't just the shared goal, but the shared blind spots. Medieval alchemists like Paracelsus believed life could be prolonged through precise chemical balances, a theory not so far removed from modern biohackers tracking micronutrients and telomere length. Both groups operate on a core assumption that the body is a machine to be optimized, whether through elixirs or epigenetic tweaks. Even their failures mirror each other. When Renaissance alchemist John Dee drank a potion of gold and mercury, it left him trembling and delusional, a precursor to today's Silicon Valley executives grappling with the side effects of experimental gene therapies or unregulated nootropics. The parallels reveal a timeless truth: the line between pioneering and recklessness thins when immortality's the prize, but the most chilling echo lies in the narratives driving these quests. Alchemists framed their work as divine rebellion, a theft of godly power akin to Prometheus. Modern transhumanists use eerily similar language, with figures like Ray Kurzweil describing a I-driven life extension as transcendence. Both movements flirt with hubris, treating death not as a natural limit but as a bug to be debugged. Consider the 14th century alchemist Nicholas Flamel, whose legendary and likely fictional immortality still captivates, just as tech billionaires now pour millions into anti-aging startups, chasing a fantasy just plausible enough to tantalize. Where the paths diverge is in scale. Medieval alchemy was a fringe pursuit, often punishable by heresy charges. Today's life extension industry has venture capital and celebrity endorsements, its ambitions amplified by CRISPR and neural implants. Yet both share a vulnerability to charismatic figures peddling salvation. The alchemists had their puffer fraudsters selling fake philosopher's stones. Today, we have unproven stem cell clinics and grey market longevity drugs. The packaging changes, but the human willingness to believe and pay for a shot at forever remains a constant. Perhaps the ultimate irony, some alchemical methods are gaining scientific respectability. Gold nanoparticles now treat arthritis, and researchers study mercury's antimicrobial properties. Even the quest to upload consciousness recalls alchemical homunculi, artificial mini-humans grown in vats. The difference is that our vats are servers, our homunculi made of code. Whether poring over parchment or petabytes, the hunger to outwit time endures, proving that the most persistent ghost in human history isn't any spirit, it's the refusal to fade away. Medieval craftsmen didn't work alone. They banded together in guilds, powerful collectives that controlled trade secrets, set wages, and protected their members from exploitation. These weren't just early unions, they were entire ecosystems regulating quality, training, and fair competition. Now swipe forward to today's gig economy, where drivers for Uber or freelancers on Upwork hustle in digital marketplaces with no collective power, no guaranteed minimums, and often no safety net. The contrast couldn't be starker. Where guilds built walls to shield workers, platforms have torn them down in the name of flexibility, leaving modern laborers exposed to the whims of algorithms and shareholder demands. Take the shoemakers' guild of 14th century Florence. To join, apprentices spent 7 years mastering their craft under a master's watchful eye, ensuring quality across the entire trade. Now picture a 21st century food delivery rider. No training beyond an app tutorial, no say in pay rates that can change overnight, and no recourse when their account gets deactivated by an automated system. The guild model wasn't perfect. It could be exclusionary and resistant to innovation, but it recognized craftsmanship as something worth protecting, not just another day to point to optimize. Modern gig platforms claim to offer freedom, but often deliver something closer to feudal servitude, with Wi-Fi workers bound not to a lord but to a rating system that dictates their livelihood. The most jarring difference lies in bargaining power. Medieval guilds didn't just set standards, they negotiated with city governments, staged walkouts, and even blockaded rival goods. When London's cordwainers went on strike in 1396, they didn't just win higher wages, they established precedent that artisans had rights worth fighting for. Compare that to Uber drivers organizing globally for basic benefits, only to face corporate armies of lawyers and lobbyists working to keep them classified as independent contractors. The playing field has shifted from collective action to individual survival, where workers compete against each other for scraps in a race to the bottom. Yet there are glimmers of the old model resurfacing. Freelancer collectives like Coworker.org are reviving guild-style advocacy, using digital tools to organize where physical workshops once served as hubs. Even some platforms are feeling pressure. California's Prop 22 battle-proved gig workers can still shake the system when they unite. Perhaps the real lesson from medieval guilds isn't about resurrecting their structure, but remembering their purpose: that labor isn't just a commodity, but a shared stake in shaping the rules of the game. After 600 years, that idea might just be due for a comeback. 70 meters of embroidered linen, stitched with scenes of conquest and betrayal. The Bayeux Tapestry wasn't just medieval art, it was an 11th century Twitter thread weaponizing images to shape public opinion. Commissioned by Bishop Odo shortly after the Norman invasion of England in 1066, this sprawling visual narrative didn't merely record history, it spun it, carefully cherry-picking moments to paint William the Conqueror as England's rightful ruler while casting Harold Godwinson as an oath-breaking usurper. Fast forward to today's political memes or state-funded news segments, and you'll recognize the same playbook: selective editing, emotional imagery, and simplified storytelling designed to sway hearts and minds at a glance. Every stitch in the tapestry served a purpose. Notice how Harold's coronation is crammed awkwardly into the border, as if the scene itself is illegitimate, while William's preparations glow with divine favor, ships built under celestial halos, priests blessing his fleet. Modern propaganda uses identical visual shorthand. Russian state TV edits footage to show Ukrainian Nazis, while Chinese media frames protests as foreign plots, both employing the same trick medieval weavers mastered: show, don't tell. The tapestry's depiction of Harold's death, an arrow to the eye, though contemporary accounts suggest he was hacked apart, mirrors how modern conflicts get reduced to single iconic images: the Syrian boy pulled from rubble, the Ukrainian grandmother confronting soldiers. These aren't just reports, they're emotional triggers engineered to bypass critical thought. Even the medium itself holds lessons. Stitched in wool rather than written on parchment, the tapestry traveled from town to town, a viral campaign before mass media. Today's equivalents aren't tapestries but TikTok clips, memes stripped of context to fit attention spans. When the tapestry shows Harold swearing allegiance to William on holy relics, it's the medieval version of a deepfake. We'll never know if the oath happened as depicted, just as we can't verify that viral clip of a politician's gaffe. Both rely on the viewer's assumption that seeing equals believing. Yet the most telling parallel is in the gaps. The tapestry ends abruptly with fleeing Anglo-Saxons, no mention of the brutal harrying of the north that followed, where William burned villages and salted fields. Modern state media operate similarly, celebrating military parades while omitting casualty reports. Both narratives thrive on dramatic climaxes, not messy aftermaths. Whether it's 11th century nuns weaving or 21st century bots retweeting, the goal remains identical: shape the story, control the memory. The needles change, but the strings stay attached. The legend first surfaced in 13th century Europe, a mysterious figure cursed to wander the earth until Judgment Day, punished for taunting Jesus on the way to the crucifixion. The Wandering Jew wasn't just a cautionary tale. He became the template for how societies mark certain groups as perpetual outsiders, never truly belonging no matter how long they stay. Fast forward to today's rhetoric about refugees or immigrants, and you'll hear the same toxic refrain: they'll never assimilate. Whether it's medieval chroniclers describing Jews as ruthless conspirators or modern politicians warning of invading caravans, the archetype remains stubbornly unchanged: a person eternally foreign, their presence always framed as temporary at best, threatening at worst. Consider how the myth functioned. The Wandering Jew was ageless, appearing in villages across centuries, his very persistence proof of divine disfavor. This mirrored real-world policies like England's 12th century edict forcing Jews to wear identifying badges, a precursor to today's demands that immigrants speak the language or abandon cultural practices to prove loyalty. Both systems create impossible standards. No matter how many generations pass, the other remains suspended between acceptance and exclusion. Medieval towns expelled Jewish communities during crises, then invited them back when tax revenues dipped, just as modern economies recruit migrant labor while decrying them for taking jobs. The script never changes, only the cast. The parallels grow darker when you examine scapegoating mechanisms. During the Black Death, the Wandering Jew was accused of bringing plague. Today, far-right movements blame immigrants for disease outbreaks, from COVID-19 to tuberculosis. Medieval artists depicted the cursed wanderer with exaggerated features, hooked nose, stooped posture, while modern xenophobia leans on coded imagery like waves or swarms that dehumanize through metaphor. Even the legend's theological roots find secular echoes. Where church doctrine framed the Jews' punishment as justified, contemporary rhetoric treats exclusion as common sense, asking, why should we take care of outsiders first? Yet there's a crucial difference in who bears the burden of proof. The Wandering Jew's curse was divine, his fate sealed by a single act. Today's outsiders face shifting goalposts. Assimilation demands that intensify with each generation. A Syrian refugee learns German, but does she really understand our values? A Latino family lives in the U.S. for decades. They're still not real Americans. This elasticity reveals the truth. The myth wasn't about behavior, but identity. It taught that some people could never shed the stain of difference, no matter how hard they tried. The legend's most insidious legacy isn't its cruelty, but its adaptability. It's mutated from religious allegory to political dog whistle, its core message unchanged. There will always be those who walk among us but are never of us. Recognizing this pattern isn't just about history, it's about breaking a cycle that has turned human beings into ghosts long before they die. A nightmare made flesh, that's the only way to describe a rat king. This grotesque phenomenon occurs when rodents become entangled by their tails, fused together by blood, filth, and knotted hair until they form a single squirming entity. Medieval Europeans saw these writhing masses as omens of doom, portents of plague looming on the horizon. Today, scientists understand the grim biology behind these twisted clusters, but the symbolism still sends shivers down spines, because in an age where viruses leap from bats to humans, from minks to farm workers, the Rat King isn't just a horror show. It's a perfect metaphor for how diseases mutate and entangle species in ways we're still struggling to comprehend. Take COVID-19's relentless evolution. Like rats forced into unnatural intimacy through overcrowding, the virus found ideal conditions to transform. Wet markets where wild and domestic animals pressed together, city slums where humans lived cheek by jowl, hospitals overflowing with vulnerable bodies. Each new host became a chance for the virus to twist its genetic code, just as each struggling rat in a king tightens the knots binding its neighbors. The Alpha variant, a few crucial mutations, Delta, a more dangerous tangle, Omicron, a genetic snarl so complex it outpaced our vaccines for months. The medieval peasant who stumbled upon a rat king saw nature's perversion. The modern epidemiologist tracking viral mutations witnesses the same terrifying plasticity, life forms adapting in ways that defy our attempts to contain them. Yet the parallels go deeper than imagery. Consider how both phenomena thrive in disrupted ecosystems. Rat kings form when populations explode beyond sustainable limits, often in filthy, cramped urban spaces. Similarly, zoonotic diseases like COVID-19 or avian flu spill over when human expansion destroys natural buffers, when forests become farms and wild creatures are pushed into human domains. The medieval world didn't understand germ theory, but they recognized that rat infestations correlated with disease. Today, we know the connection is literal. 70% of emerging infectious diseases originate in animals, their genetic material tangling with ours in a biological version of those knotted tails. What makes these echoes truly unsettling is the element of unpredictability. A rat king's formation is as random as it is grotesque, dependent on chance entanglements in dark corners. Viral mutations follow the same chaotic rules. No one could have predicted that a pangolin coronavirus would recombine with a bat strain to create SARS-CoV-2, just as no medieval farmer could anticipate finding a cluster of rats fused mid-agony. Both scenarios reveal nature's capacity for horror when pushed to extremes, reminding us that the most frightening monsters aren't supernatural. They're the unintended consequences of our own disruption. Perhaps the most sobering lesson lies in response. Medieval towns burned rat kings as cursed objects, unaware that the real danger wasn't the tangled rodents but the fleas they carried. Today, we risk repeating that mistake, focusing on individual variants while ignoring the structural conditions that allow pandemics to emerge. The Rat King isn't just a relic of superstition. It's a warning written in blood and fur and RNA. The tighter we knot the natural world, the more certain it becomes that we'll be dragged into the tangle too. Deep in the medieval woodcuts and tapestries, a hairy, club-wielding figure lurks at the edges of civilization, the wild man. Half human, half beast, this creature represented everything orderly society feared. The untamed wilderness, the savage within, the unknown lurking just beyond the firelight. Fast forward to 1967, when two men filmed a hairy, bipedal figure striding through California's Bluff Creek. And suddenly, the wild man had a new name, Bigfoot. The resemblance isn't coincidental. Across 600 years, our collective imagination keeps conjuring the same primal archetype, a humanoid just human enough to unsettle, just bestial enough to defy explanation. Medieval villagers told stories of wild men stealing livestock or peering into cottage windows, their eyes glowing in the dark. These weren't just campfire tales, they reflected very real fears of outcasts and bandits hiding in the forests. When highways replaced thickets, the stories simply migrated. The Mothman of 1966 West Virginia, with its glowing red eyes and winged silhouette, fits the same psychological mold, a shadowy watcher haunting the edges of modernity, appearing near abandoned factories instead of ancient oaks. Even the descriptions mirror each other. Medieval artists gave wild men matted fur and twisted postures, while modern witnesses describe Bigfoot as ape-like but too tall, or Mothman as a man with wings but wrong. That word, wrong, is the key. These creatures exist in the uncanny valley between known and unknown, triggering an instinctive alarm. The parallels grow even stranger when you examine the context of these sightings. Medieval wild man encounters spiked during times of social upheaval, plagues, wars, peasant revolts. Similarly, Mothman appeared as Cold War tensions simmered near a military munitions plant, while Bigfoot sightings surged during the counterculture movement of the 1960s and 70s. Both sets of legends thrive when the world feels unstable, offering a tangible focus for amorphous anxieties. A starving peasant might blame failed crops on a wild man's curse. A deindustrializing town might attribute strange lights to a winged omen. The monsters change costumes, but their role remains constant. They're the embodiment of whatever chaos society can't control. Yet there's a crucial difference in how we process these encounters today. Medieval villagers might leave offerings to appease wild men or carve their images into church pews as warnings. Modern cryptid hunters deploy thermal drones and analyze footprint casts with algorithms. The tools have upgraded, but the hunger for proof hasn't. When a blurry photo of a supposed Sasquatch goes viral today, it sparks the same mix of dread and fascination that a traveler's account of a wild man once did. Both narratives pivot on the tantalizing possibility that just beyond the edge of the map, something waits, something our science can't quite explain, but our bones insist is real. The most telling detail, even our debunkings echo the past. Medieval clergy dismissed wild man sightings as drunken hallucinations or demonic illusions. Today's skeptics blame hoaxes, misidentified bears, or swamp gas. Yet the stories persist because some human need keeps resurrecting this archetype, the part of us that still wonders in the dead of night if we're truly alone in the dark. Whether it's a 13th century woodcutter crossing himself or a 21st century hiker checking their GoPro, the glance over the shoulder remains the same. The wild man never left, he just learned to hide in the glow of our headlights. The grinning skeletons of the Danse Macabre didn't just decorate medieval churches, they trolled the living. These vivid frescoes showed death as an equalizer, seizing peasants and kings mid-strut, reminding everyone that no status or wealth could cheat the grave. Fast forward to today's meme culture, where existential humor floods our feeds, skull emojis paired with TFW It's Monday, or viral videos of skeletons dancing to pop songs. The medium has swapped frescoes for smartphones, but the message remains shockingly identical. Mortality laughs last, and the only sane response is to laugh with it. Medieval artists staged the Danse Macabre as a theatrical parade, with skeletal figures yanking merchants from their coin piles and nobles from their feasts. The humor was dark but deliberate, a way to process plagues and wars by mocking life's fragility. Modern meme accounts do the same job with nihilistic punchlines. A viral tweet like, "We're all just future corpses waiting to happen," echoes the 15th century woodcut of death snuffing a candle between its bony fingers. Both use absurdity to defang the terror of oblivion. Even the visual language overlaps, where medieval skeletons mimicked human vices, gambling, gluttony, vanity. Today's bone-hurting juice memes or the Grim Reaper dab ironically on our own obsessions with productivity and hustle culture. Yet there's a crucial twist in how these themes circulate. The Danse Macabre was sanctioned by the church, a controlled dose of memento mori to keep congregations pious. Today's mortality memes spread organically, a grassroots coping mechanism for generations drowning in student debt and climate anxiety. When a TikTok trend superimposes dancing skeletons over footage of burning rainforests, it's not just gallows humor. It's a digital age Danse Macabre for an era where systemic collapse feels as inevitable as the Black Death. The jokes become armor, just as medieval laborers might have whistled past graveyard frescoes on their way to another backbreaking day, the most telling parallel. Both movements thrive when control slips away. The original Danse Macabre emerged as the bubonic plague erased half of Europe, mocking the illusion of stability. Today's existential memes spike during elections, pandemics, or stock market crashes, moments when the script of progress phrase. A 14th century peasant and a 21st century Zoomer might not speak the same language, but they'd instantly recognize the shared punchline: everything's terrible, so why not laugh while we still can? The bones haven't changed, only the audience has. Digging up a mandrake root in medieval Europe wasn't just gardening, it was a perilous ritual. According to legend, these human-shaped plants screamed when uprooted, a cry so harrowing it could kill anyone who heard it. Harvesters tied dogs to the roots, letting the animals take the lethal blow as they pulled. This wasn't mere superstition, it reflected a deep belief that plants weren't passive objects but beings with awareness, even souls. Fast forward to today's labs, where scientists debate whether plants exhibit forms of intelligence, from communicating via fungal networks to displaying memory-like behaviors. The mandrake myth might seem like primitive fantasy, but it raises a question we're still wrestling with. Where do we draw the line between life and sentience? Consider the eerie parallels. Medieval herbalists believed mandrakes thrived under gallows, fertilized by the blood of the hanged, a grisly metaphor for life springing from death. Modern research reveals equally astonishing connections, trees sharing nutrients with stumps of felled companions through underground mycorrhizal networks, behaving almost like a community caring for its wounded. The ancient idea that plants possess a form of consciousness, once dismissed as folklore, now finds echoes in studies showing corn seedlings reacting to the recordings of caterpillar chewing, or mimosa plants remembering harmless stimuli. It's as if science is catching up to the intuition behind those mandrake legends, that the green world is far more perceptive than we assumed. yet the real tension emerges in how we act on this knowledge. Medieval collectors treated mandrakes with rituals approaching reverence, acknowledging their power. Today, as we genetically modify crops to silence pest-resistance genes or patent lab-grown plant tissues, ethical lines blur. If a tomato can be engineered to scream chemically when bruised, releasing distress signals detectable by nearby plants, does that make it less a vegetable and more a subject? Philosophers and botanists clash over whether plant neurobiology warrants rights akin to animal welfare, a debate that would have made perfect sense to a 13th century apothecary whispering apologies to his herbs. The darkest twist: commercial exploitation. Mandrake roots were commodified as fertility charms and anesthesia, often fraudulently carved to enhance their humanoid appearance. Modern agribusiness mirrors this dynamic, patenting drought-resistant seeds while small farmers lose access to traditional cultivars. Both systems grapple with the same dilemma. Once you acknowledge a life form's complexity, how do you justify bending it to human will? Perhaps the mandrake's greatest lesson isn't about plants at all, but about us. Our ancestors projected human traits onto roots to make sense of nature's mystery. Today, we're forced to confront that the mystery might be real, just not in the shape we expected. Whether it's medieval peasants fearing a shrieking herb or Silicon Valley investing in plant-based AI, the underlying question remains: if something responds, learns, or adapts, does it deserve a voice in its own fate? The mandrake never really stopped screaming, we just got better at pretending not to hear it. In the dim corners of medieval taverns, travelers passed around dog-eared manuscripts filled with absurd tales, accounts of peasant fools outwitting kings, talking animals parodying clergy, and bawdy stories mocking the powerful. This was the golden age of fool's literature, a secret vein of satire running beneath the surface of a rigid feudal society. Fast forward to today's digital landscape, where outlets like The Onion or viral TikTok skits skewer politicians with the same razor-sharp irreverence. The disguises may have changed: wood cut prints swapped for meme formats, but the rebel spirit remains untouched. Laughter as the last weapon of the powerless against the mighty. Medieval jesters understood a dangerous truth: that humor could smuggle dissent past the gatekeepers of power. Take Till Eulenspiegel, the legendary trickster whose 14th century exploits became a clandestine bestseller. In one story, he sells a townspeople invisible cloth, mirroring modern satires about government waste or corporate greed. The joke wasn't just in the fool's antics, but in the audience's silent recognition: we're all being swindled. Today's equivalents, like Babylon Bee's headline, "Nation finally breaks down, buys everything on Amazon," function identically, offering plausible absurdity that exposes real dysfunction. Both genres thrive on plausible deniability. What's parody today could be a leaked memo tomorrow. The parallels deepen when you examine the risks. Medieval scribes often attributed their satires to anonymous or dead authors to avoid the dungeon or worse. Modern satirists face softer but eerily similar pressures: shadow banning algorithms, defamation lawsuits, or online mobs missing the joke. Consider how 15th century Shrovetide plays mocked corrupt bishops through exaggerated buffoonery until the church banned them. Now watch how TikTok creators parody politicians with exaggerated accents, only to have their accounts flagged for misinformation. The mechanisms of suppression have upgraded from the executioner's axe to the content moderator's toggle, but the intent remains: to silence those who laugh at the emperor's new clothes. Yet the most striking similarity lies in the audience's role. Medieval fool's literature was participatory. Readers added their own mocking verses in margins, transforming books into collaborative roast sessions. Today's satire evolves the same way. A tweet from The Onion sparks thousands of quote tweets and remixes, each layer sharpening the critique. When a viral video superimposes a politician's speech over footage of a braying donkey, it's the digital descendant of those illuminated manuscripts where monks doodled donkey ears on bishops in the margins. The technology accelerates the cycle, but the human impulse to deflate pomposity through collective creativity hasn't budged in 600 years. What makes these connections more than just historical curiosity is their subversive power. During the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, rebels quoted fools' literature to justify dismantling manor houses. Today, satire fuels real-world movements. Think of protesters wielding memes like "Eat the Rich" outside Wall Street. Both prove that laughter isn't just catharsis, it's reconnaissance mapping the cracks in power structures. The jesters' bells might have morphed into notification chimes, but their message still tolls. Mockery is the canary in the coal mine for tyranny. When the powerful can no longer tolerate being laughed at, the revolution isn't far behind. Pilgrims once traveled hundreds of miles just to glimpse a single tooth, not because it was rare, but because it supposedly came from the mouth of a saint. The medieval cult of relics turned fragments of bone, locks of hair, and even vials of dust into objects of obsessive devotion, with churches competing to display the most outlandish artifacts. One French abbey claimed to possess the entire body of Saint Foy, while another boasted a vial of Virgin Mary's breast milk. Fast forward to today's celebrity auctions, where Justin Bieber's half-eaten toast sells for thousands and a strand of Elvis's hair fetches 6 figures, and you'll realize the impulse hasn't vanished, it's just traded halos for fame. The psychology behind these obsessions is startlingly similar. Medieval believers saw relics as conduits to the divine, physical vessels of holiness that could heal the sick or sway battles. Modern fans don't just want a guitar pick used by their favorite musician. They crave a tactile connection to the magic they admire. A shred of Kurt Cobain's sweater isn't just fabric. It's a secular relic charged with the aura of genius and tragedy. Both traditions thrive on the same illusion, that proximity to an object somehow transfers the power of its owner. When a 13th century peasant kissed a saint's finger bone, they hoped for miracles. When a Taylor Swift fan buys her doodled napkin, they're chasing their own kind of transcendence. Even the economies mirror each other. Medieval relic markets were rife with forgeries. So many fake fragments of the true cross circulated that John Calvin joked they could build a ship. Today, authentication certificates accompany celebrity memorabilia, yet scams still flourish. A lock of Marilyn Monroe's hair might be synthetic, just as those saintly bones often turned out to be animal remains. The difference: medieval forgers risked eternal damnation, while modern counterfeiters just face lawsuits. The most telling parallel, though, lies in the rituals. Pilgrims once crawled on their knees to reach a relic shrine, much like fans camp for days outside concert venues for a chance to touch their idol's hand. Both acts transform ordinary objects into sacred tokens through sheer collective belief. Consider the chain reactions they spark. A saint's toenail inspires a cathedral's construction, while a K-pop star's wrist funds a fan's cross-continental trip. The objects themselves are mundane, it's the stories we graft onto them that give them weight. Yet there's a crucial divergence in what these cults reveal about us. Medieval relic worship reflected a society desperate for certainty in an unpredictable world. Miracles offered proof of divine order. Today's celebrity worship, by contrast, often mirrors our disillusionment with institutions, turning entertainers into secular saints. We don't pray to Beyoncé for rain, but we do credit her with cultural salvation. The relics have changed, but the hunger for something or someone to believe in remains as human as ever. After all, what's a signed baseball card if not a postmodern prayer card? The astrolabe didn't just tell time, it mapped the heavens, a handheld universe of brass and precision that guided sailors across uncharted oceans. Invented in ancient Greece but perfected by medieval Islamic scholars, this intricate device calculated latitude by measuring the angle between the horizon and celestial bodies, turning the night sky into a cosmic roadmap. Fast forward to today's drivers blindly obeying the robotic voice of Google Maps, and you'll realize we haven't outgrown the need for guidance, we've just digitized the stars. What's fascinating isn't just the shared purpose, but the parallel blind trust users placed in both systems. Medieval navigators relying on astrolabes knew the tool's calculations weren't perfect. Cloud cover could obscure reference stars, or rough seas might tilt the instrument mid-reading. Yet they adjusted their routes based on its whispers, just as modern commuters swerve onto dubious side streets because an algorithm declares it's 2 minutes faster. Both technologies thrive on the illusion of infallibility. The astrolabe's brass rings seemed as authoritative to a 15th century sailor as the blue pulsing dot on our screens feels today. The real innovation, we've replaced squinting at Polaris with yelling at Siri. The social impact of these tools reveals even deeper echoes. Astrolabes were status symbols, their complexity limiting access to educated elites, usually monks or merchant captains who could interpret their intricate scales. Compare that to today's navigation apps, which democratized wayfinding but created new dependencies. Medieval peasants might have memorized local landmarks. Modern pedestrians can't navigate 3 blocks without GPS. Both systems, for all their brilliance, eroded instinctive spatial awareness, outsourcing knowledge to external devices. There's a poignant irony in humanity inventing the astrolabe to conquer the unknown, only to end up with drivers who can't find their way home without a satellite tether. Yet the most striking parallel lies in how both technologies reshape landscapes. Astrolabe-guided voyages birthed trade routes that defined empires, funneling wealth into port cities like Venice or Constantinople. Today's traffic algorithms alter urban ecosystems overnight. Ways rerouting thousands of cars through quiet neighborhoods transforms suburban streets into congested thoroughfares. Both tools promised efficiency, but their ripple effects often blindsided users. A medieval merchant might have grumbled about pirates drawn to busy shipping lanes, just as modern homeowners protest strangers idling outside their driveways. The lesson: any system that dictates movement, whether calibrated by stars or servers, doesn't just guide journeys, it redraws the map itself. Perhaps the final twist is how both technologies confront their limits. Astrolabes faltered near the equator, where celestial geometry defied their design. Modern GPS stumbles in urban canyons or rural dead zones, leaving users spinning like lost sailors. The difference is in our reactions. Medieval navigators carried backup compasses and star charts, while today's drivers panic when their phone dies, stranded without alternatives. Progress, it seems, has made us better at following directions and worse at finding our way. The astrolabe's greatest legacy isn't in museums, but in the quiet realization that no matter how advanced our tools become, we're still just one wrong turn away from being truly lost. The peasants' revolt of 1381 wasn't just a medieval riot, it was a blueprint for every grassroots uprising to follow. When an army of laborers and craftsmen marched on London, burning tax records and storming the Tower, they weren't just angry about a new poll tax. They were demanding something radical for their time: economic fairness. Fast forward 6 centuries to the Occupy Wall Street encampments in 2011, or the yellow vests blocking Parisian highways in 2018, and you'll hear the same fundamental cry: systems rigged for the powerful must fall. The weapons have changed from pitchforks to hashtags, but the battle lines remain shockingly familiar. Start with the spark. Medieval peasants revolted when a war-depleted treasury imposed a flat tax, crushing the poor while nobles dodged payments. Occupy erupted after the 2008 financial crisis, when taxpayer bailouts rescued banks but left ordinary homeowners drowning in debt. Both movements zeroed in on the same injustice. Elites were writing rules to protect themselves while ordinary citizens bore the cost. Even the language echoes across centuries. The rebels in 1381 circulated letters quoting the revolutionary priest John Ball, "When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman." Occupy's motto, "We are the 99%," channeled that same class-conscious fury, updated for the age of hedge funds. Tactics reveal even sharper parallels. The peasants' revolt targeted symbols of oppression. They burned the Savoy Palace, home of the detested Duke of Lancaster, just as Yellow Vests torched luxury cars and vandalized boutique storefronts as emblems of elite excess. Both movements understood the power of spectacle. Medieval rebels paraded captured officials through the streets, while modern protesters live-stream police confrontations to galvanize global support. Even their decentralized structures mirror each other. The peasants' revolt had no single leader, relying on local organizers like Wat Tyler and grassroots networks, a medieval version of Occupy's leaderless horizontalism, where decisions emerged from general assemblies rather than top-down commands. Yet the most haunting similarity lies in the backlash. Medieval chroniclers painted the rebels as drunken mobs, their legitimate grievances erased by narratives of chaos. Modern media often frames protesters similarly. Occupy dismissed as dirty hippies, Yellow Vests reduced to violent anarchists. Authorities in both eras responded with selective concessions followed by brutal crackdowns. King Richard II initially agreed to abolish serfdom during the revolt, only to revoke his promises and execute rebel leaders once the threat passed. Compare that to politicians today who acknowledge wealth inequality in speeches while passing laws to dismantle protest camps or expand surveillance. What makes these echoes more than historical curiosity is their lesson about cyclical struggle. The peasants' revolt briefly terrified the nobility, but feudal systems endured for centuries. Occupy and Yellow Vests shifted discourse without dismantling financialization or austerity. Yet both medieval and modern movements prove something vital, that when pushed too far, ordinary people will rise regardless of era or technology. The real question isn't whether history repeats, but whether we'll finally break the cycle or just keep adding new verses to an old, angry song. Crack open a medieval bestiary, and you'll stumble into a world where whales are mistaken for islands and barnacle geese sprout fully formed from driftwood. These lavishly illustrated manuscripts weren't just early natural history texts, they were moral fables disguised as biology, teaching virtue through fantastical creatures. Fast forward to today's cryptozoology forums, where grainy photos of Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster spark fervent debates, and you'll realize we're still cataloging the impossible. The tools have upgraded from parchment to pixels, but the human craving to believe in hidden wonders hasn't dimmed one bit. Take the bestiary's most famous fraud, the bonacon, a bull-like beast with curved horns and a unique defense mechanism. According to 13th century scribes, when threatened, it expelled burning dung over an area of 3 acres. Absurd, absolutely. Yet modern cryptid lore thrives on similarly outlandish biology. The chupacabra's glowing red eyes and penchant for draining goat blood mirror the same blend of predator myth and rural anxiety that spawned medieval tales of wolves who could hypnotize their prey. Both traditions reveal less about the creatures they describe than the fears of the people imagining them. A peasant terrified of unseen predators might invent a bonacon. A farmer grappling with unexplained livestock deaths conjures a chupacabra. The monsters change costumes, but the script stays the same. What's truly fascinating is how both bestiaries and cryptozoology handle evidence. Medieval authors cited ancient texts like Pliny's Natural History as irrefutable proof, even when describing dragons or unicorns. Today's cryptid hunters invoke blurry photos or anecdotal sightings with the same reverence, treating them as holy relics in their quest for legitimacy. Consider the Fouke monster of Arkansas, a 70s-era Bigfoot knockoff whose proof included plaster casts of indistinct footprints and a sensationalized docudrama. It's the spiritual successor to bestiary entries that presented Manticore's lion-bodied, human-faced, scorpion-tailed hybrids as fact because explorers claim to have seen them. Both systems rely on a cocktail of hearsay, misinterpretation, and outright fabrication, all wrapped in the language of scientific inquiry, yet the most telling parallel lies in their cultural functions. Bestiaries weren't meant to document reality, they were moral instruction manuals. The pelican, said to pierce its own breast to feed its young with blood, became a symbol of Christ's sacrifice. Similarly, modern cryptids often embody contemporary anxieties. The Mothman of West Virginia emerged during Cold War paranoia near a military munitions plant, its winged silhouette evoking nuclear mutants or fallen angels. Even Nessie, the quintessential lake monster, gained traction during the 1930s when advances in sonar technology made the ocean's depths feel newly explorable and newly terrifying. Whether it's a medieval illustrator warning against sin via grotesque hybrids or a podcast host speculating about government cover-ups of UFOs, both traditions use monsters to navigate the boundaries of the known world. The critical difference: bestiaries had institutional backing. Monks painstakingly copied these texts in scriptoriums, and nobles prized them as status symbols. Cryptozoology, by contrast, thrives in the fringe Reddit threads, late-night cable shows, and self-published books, but that outsider status might be its greatest strength. Where bestiaries calcified into dogma, cryptid lore remains fluid, adapting to each generation's fears. The Jersey Devil began as an 18th-century political allegory. Today, it's reimagined as an ecological avenger haunting overdeveloped woods. The creatures evolve because we need them to, so the next time you see a headline about another sea serpent sighting, remember, you're not just reading news, you're witnessing the latest chapter in a tradition as old as parchment itself. The Bonnican's fiery dung may be forgotten, but the desire to populate the world's shadowy corners with wonders, that's as enduring as the ink on a medieval page. Imagine standing before a searing hot iron, told to grasp it, your guilt or innocence determined not by evidence but by how quickly your burns healed. This was trial by ordeal, a medieval practice where priests relied on divine intervention to reveal the truth. If your wounds festered, God had judged you guilty. If they healed cleanly, you walked free. Now replace the iron with a polygraph snaking wires or an AI scanning micro-expressions, and you'll realize we're still chasing the same elusive goal: a perfect lie detector. The methods have evolved from fire to algorithms, but the fundamental question remains: can any tool truly peer into the human heart? Medieval ordeals weren't just crude torture, they were sophisticated psychological theater. Take the ordeal of water, where an accused witch was bound and tossed into a river. Floating was proof of guilt rejected by the pure water, while sinking signaled innocence even if it meant drowning. Authorities framed these tests as holy rituals, but their real power lay in manipulation. A priest could quietly adjust water salinity or iron temperature, ensuring outcomes aligned with community suspicions. Modern lie detection operates on similar shaky ground. Polygraphs measure pulse and sweat, mistaking anxiety for deceit, while AI lie detectors like eye detect track pupil dilation, metrics just as easily skewed by stress, cultural differences, or even caffeine. Both systems share a dangerous illusion of objectivity, dressing bias in the robes of science or divinity. The parallels grow darker when you examine who controls the tools. Medieval ordeals were church-sanctioned, their outcomes interpreted by clergy with vested interests. Land disputes, rivalries, or political agendas. Today's truth technologies often serve similar power structures. Law enforcement agencies deploy polygraphs despite their 60% accuracy rate, knowing the mere threat of testing can coerce confessions. China's emotion recognition AI, tested on Uyghur minorities, flags suspicious facial movements based on training data skewed toward Han-majority expressions. Whether it's a 13th century inquisitor or a 21st century algorithm, both systems disproportionately target the marginalized, transforming subjective judgments into seemingly irrefutable verdicts. Yet the most unsettling similarity lies in how both systems exploit faith. Medieval peasants believed God would intervene, a divine finger tipping the scales. Modern jurors place equal faith in the polygraph's squiggling lines or an AI's probability score, despite experts warning these tools are little better than high-tech guesswork. The irony: we've swapped one flawed oracle for another. A 15th century woman might blame her failed ordeal on the devil's interference, just as a suspect today claims their nervousness triggered a false positive. Both explanations reveal the same uncomfortable truth: no technology, sacred or silicon, can untangle the knot of human deception. Here's where the comparison takes a hopeful turn. Trial by ordeal faded not because people stopped lying, but because societies recognized its brutality and randomness. The same reckoning may await modern truth tech. Courts increasingly reject polygraphs, while AI ethicists expose racial and gender biases in emotion detection. The real progress lies not in perfecting lie detectors, but in admitting their limits. That truth, in the end, requires something neither iron nor algorithms can provide: patience, evidence, and the humility to accept we'll never have a perfect key to the secrets of the soul. The courtroom hushed as the accused stood trembling, not for theft or violence, but for the crime of lunacy. In medieval Europe, erratic behavior could land you in front of a judge, where your fate hinged on supernatural theories of madness. The moon's phases were blamed for mental instability, hence lunacy, while inexplicable outbursts were often attributed to demonic possession. Fast forward to today's emergency rooms, where patients in crisis still face judgmental whispers or even physical restraints, and you'll realize how little the stigma has faded. Only the vocabulary has changed from moonstruck to mentally ill. Consider the chilling similarities in confinement. Medieval lunatics were frequently shackled in church basements or left to wander with warning bells tied around their necks, a crude form of community alert. Modern parallels persist in underfunded psychiatric wards, where patients are sedated for convenience, or homeless individuals cycle endlessly through emergency rooms without proper care. Both systems share the same dehumanizing impulse: to remove disruptive behavior from sight rather than understand its roots. Even the language echoes across centuries, where medieval scribes described sufferers as frenzied or bewitched. Today's police reports might label them erratic or non-compliant, medicalizing what was once demonized without truly addressing the core issues. The darkest parallel lies in treatment rituals. Medieval cures included drilling holes in skulls to release evil spirits or submerging patients in ice baths to shock them back to sanity. While we've abandoned such barbarism, modern psychiatry's history includes electroconvulsive therapy without anesthesia and lobotomies performed with ice picks, procedures later revealed to cause more harm than healing. Both eras grappled with the same dilemma: how to help those whose minds operate outside societal norms. The tools became sterile, but the desperation to fix the unfixable remained. Yet there's a crucial difference in accountability. Medieval torturers acted on sincere belief in supernatural causes. Many modern practitioners know better but are trapped in overwhelmed systems. A 15th century priest might have prescribed exorcism for depression, but today's underpaid social worker lacks resources for therapy, defaulting to sedation as a stopgap. The tragedy isn't just the persistence of stigma, but our collective failure to apply centuries of scientific progress equitably, the most telling evolution. The rise of self-diagnosis as rebellion. Where medieval sufferers had no framework beyond sin or possession, today's youth flood TikTok with ADHD and autism hashtags, reclaiming labels that were once weapons. It's a paradoxical shift, from authorities diagnosing deviance to individuals asserting identity through diagnosis. This grassroots movement, flawed as it may be, represents the first real break from history's cycle. For all its oversimplifications, it acknowledges something revolutionary: that the mad might deserve voices, not just verdicts. What these echoes reveal isn't our inability to solve mental illness, but our unwillingness to truly see it. The chains are plastic now, the dungeons brightly lit, but until we stop confusing management with healing, we're still conducting trials. Only now the judges' robes are white coats and the verdicts come printed on prescription pads. Progress isn't just about better treatments, but dismantling the quiet assumption that some minds are worth less than others, a prejudice as old as the moon itself. Centuries may separate us from the medieval world, but these stories reveal something startling. Our deepest fears and fascinations haven't evolved as much as we'd like to think. Whether it's pandemics exposing societal fractures, moral panics fueling persecution, or the relentless hunt for answers to life's greatest mysteries, history doesn't just echo, it holds up a mirror. We've swapped parchment for pixels, iron trials for AI judgments, and wandering Jews for politicized immigration debates, but the human heart at the center of these tales remains remarkably unchanged. The same impulses that sent medieval villagers hunting for witches now send us scrolling through conspiracy forums, and the awe that once surrounded saintly relics now clings to celebrity memorabilia. What makes these parallels so haunting isn't just their persistence, but their adaptability. The Black Death's quarantines foreshadowed our pandemic lockdowns, while today's digital witch hunts replay medieval mob mentalities with algorithmic precision. Even our quest for immortality has merely traded alchemists' elixirs for Silicon Valley's transhumanist startups. The stage props have been updated, longships replaced by ransomware, astrolabes by GPS, but the scripts we're acting out feel eerily familiar. It's as if humanity keeps stumbling into the same psychological traps, just dressed in different eras' clothing. Yet there's hope in this repetition. Every time we recognize these patterns, whether in the backlash against child activists or the manipulation of mass fear, we gain a chance to rewrite the ending. History's greatest gift isn't just warning us about potential pitfalls. It's showing us our capacity to learn, adapt, and sometimes, just sometimes, break the cycle. The next time you see a headline about viral hysteria or political scapegoating, remember, you've got 600 years of perspective at your fingertips. Use it. Now we want to hear from you. What uncanny parallels did we miss between medieval mysteries and modern life? Drop your thoughts below, and if you loved this journey through time's hidden connections, don't forget to subscribe. After all, the past isn't finished whispering its secrets, and we've got plenty more deep dives where this one came from. Who knows, the next echo might be even stranger than the last.